Thank you all very much. As I mentioned, I'm Archana Venkatesan, the interim director of the Davis Humanities Institute. And it's a wonderful honor to be here hosting this webinar on Punjabi foodways. As many of you may know, this is part of our week-long celebration of the Punjabi community's contributions to the Sacramento Valley, as well as to the UC Davis campus. So we've had a wonderful kickoff event on Monday, Gurbani Sangeet last night, and today we're focusing on Punjabi foodways with our wonderful guests, Nicole Ranganath, Pushpinder Singh, Raj Sodhi Lane, and Harleen Ball. I don't want to take up much time because I want to have our panelists speak, but I'm just going to very briefly introduce our speakers today. Nicole Ranganath is an assistant professor in Middle East South Asia Studies at the University of California, Davis, who specializes in the history of the Punjabi diaspora. She is the founding curator of the UC Davis Pioneering Punjabis Digital Archive, and her forthcoming book is Women and the Sikh Diaspora, Music and Mobility Across the Seven Seas, which is expected out very eagerly, anticipated in 2024. I should also add that Professor Ranganath has been our key partner in designing Punjabi Week and is the curator of several of the events that we are showcasing. So welcome, Nicole. Pushpinder Kaur is an accomplished educator and writer based in the Bay Area. She's a principal founder of San Jose's Guru Nanak Khalsa School in 1989, which is the largest Punjabi school in the United States. She's also a popular author and motivational speaker who led the curricular design team for the Punjabi courses that are currently offered for students throughout the UC system. Please welcome Pushpinder Kaur. Our next panelist is Raj K. Sodhi Lane, who is the vice president of the US Bank in Fresno, California, and has enjoyed a 40-year career in banking and finance. She currently serves on the mayor's advisory council in Fresno. She looks forward to her next chapter in life, in which she will launch the Indian Business Development Foundation of the Central Valley. Please welcome Raj Sodhi Lane to our webinar, to this virtual space. Finally, I'm delighted to welcome one of our own UC Davis community members, our PhD student of Socio and Cultural Anthropology at the University of California, Davis, Harleen Kaur Ball, whose research focuses on the intersection of work and well-being in the Punjabi diaspora. Please join us again for the screening tomorrow night of Harleen's short film called Unpacking Immigration, which explores Punjabi migration and meatpacking labor in California's Central Valley, a project that was made possible by a Mellon Public Scholars Grant that Harleen received via the Davis Humanities Institute. So with that, I turn the mic over to Nicole, who will be curating and moderating this event, and I thank you all for joining us. And I'm going to turn off my camera so that I don't distract from the speakers.
So delighted to be here with you today to talk about, the funnest topic we can imagine, which is Punjabi food and culture. And before we begin, I just want to give a heartfelt thank you to the Davis Humanities Institute, and particularly to Professor Archana Venkatesan and also Morgan Manfred for their, tremendous support for highlighting the Punjabi community in California. And Punjabis have played an important role in California's history for 130 years. And I'm always surprised, at how few people know about this rich history. And so I'd love to talk to you today about you three women have very different experiences, I think, with Punjabi food, Punjabi culture. And I look forward to exploring kind of your personal history and memories about Punjabi food, and also, how your relationship to Punjabi culture, particularly foodways, has changed, after you migrated to the United States. And what traditions you thought were really essential to carry forward and to teach to your children, and what kind of adjustments did you make given your professional careers and your different lifestyles here. So let me begin with a very general question, which is for those of us, our guests today who aren't familiar with Punjabi food, how would you describe Punjabi food to someone who's never had it before?
Delicious.
Whoever would like to.
I would say Punjabi food, and this is my opinion, is flavorful, very flavorful, all different kinds of flavors, whether it's a vegetable dish, whether it's a meat dish, whether I'm eating it with what's called a roti, which is a round flour tortilla-like, whether it's a paratha, which is a square type of roti that's stuffed with potatoes or some other type of green vegetable. So compared to American food, and I have an American husband, he would much prefer Punjabi food compared to American food because he's always adding Tabasco sauce, salt and pepper, and anything he can get his hands on to add the flavor that we feel is missing from American food. And I say that with all due respect to American cuisine, but that's the difference that we've noticed as a family.
Thank you so much. So why don't we begin with some of your earliest memories? You know, a lot of our emotional attachments to food are formed, very early in life. And let me begin with Pushpinder Kaurji and ask you, what are some of your fondest memories as a child with the food, that you grew up with? What was the circumstances in which you were raised? And, what are some of your kind of cherished food memories you can share with us?
Thank you, Nicoleji, for that question. As a child, I think I was always hungry. And I couldn't have enough food. We were a large family. I'm one of 10, number 9 from 10 children. In addition, 3 boys from my sister, eldest sister, they lived with us too. And my family was displaced from Pakistan. And I was born 9 years after, but we still, my parents were still struggling, especially with a large family and the scarcity of food. So whatever food we could get hold of, it was yummy and delicious and not enough. Elders in the house, the grown-ups, I felt, maybe I was wrong, that they could eat as much as they wanted to, but the food was rationed for us. So, and I used to think, when I grow up and I be a mom, I'll eat all the food. That was my heartfelt desire to do that. But whatever food was served, it was very simple, very fresh. We did not have electricity in our village. We did not have refrigeration. So food was cooked fresh. Made with a lot of love. And I when I started cooking and my mother was still around, I asked BG, how come your food tastes so good and mine not so much, even though mine is much richer than what you used to make? And she used to say, you have to put a lot of love in it. So I think that speaks of Punjabi food. When you talk about what does Punjabi food taste like, it tastes of love. It's this lot of, satisfaction, gratification in cooking for your kids, for your family. So I remember very simple food, khichdi, chutney, very simple food, butter, a lot of butter, but delicious.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask one follow-up question, which is oftentimes in villages in Punjab, there will be buffaloes right there, at the home.
Yes.
And, Punjabis really prefer like buffalo milk.
Yes.
And products to say cows.
Yes.
And so I was wondering if you could talk about, what was your relationship, to your buffaloes, and And what kind of
Yeah.
food did you consume?
So we
from the
had buffaloes
milk?
and cows both, and I think we also had a goat. So goat milk is very healthy, not as delicious, and cow milk is yellower than the buffalo milk, and buffalo milk is much thicker, and the cream on top, you really get half an inch thickness, and I used to love that. So my dad used to milk the buffaloes and the cow, and I used to love the fresh milk from the buffalo's teats. I just wanted the fresh. So he would give the fresh milk to me from the buffalo while he was milking him. And then he said, why don't you learn to milk the buffalo? And then you can drink as much milk as you want to. So then he taught me that, and I did it. And the delicious food that my mother used to make from that is, you boil the milk and you make cream on top. We call it malai, and you eat it with roti, and it tastes delicious. Stuffed roti. You can also have plain roti, just with salt and pepper inside, and with yogurt. Then you make fresh lassi, buttermilk every single day, and a dollop of butter. My mother, you would make a real big ball of butter. And so all of those, and then kheer, of course, we will make kheer. She'll make dalia with milk. All of those things were delicious. And paneer, sometimes if we didn't drink all the milk, then she had leftover milk. She would make paneer sometimes, but not very often. That was an exotic thing for us. But milking the cows preceded by feeding them, by bathing them, by cleaning them, mixing up their fodder with and many exquisite things that my dad used to bring from the shop. So yeah, those are some of the memories. The flies around them, the cow dung around that, all the smells.
Thank you so much. I should say this webinar should come with a warning that you may get very hungry while listening to the stories. Rajdi, I was wondering if you could answer the same question about what are some of your earliest memories around food?
It definitely is lunchtime, right?
Yeah.
So my experience is very different than Pushpinder Benji's, in that I was born and raised in England. I'm the oldest of 5 children, so we have 4 daughters and 1 boy. And my mother, some of my fondest memories are that every day, Monday through Friday, my mom homemade our breakfast. And it was a different breakfast. So we would line up all 5 kids, and I remember this, we had those Formica countertops in England. And whether it was semia, whether it was eggs, whether it was a different breakfast every morning, not out of a box with milk poured over it, not the Pop-Tarts that I sometimes gave my children here in America. And so I've always admired my mother's, what's the word I want to say? Pushpinder, you talked about love in preparing the dishes for her 5 children. It was her way of showing us that we needed a good hot breakfast to start our school day out with. And there's been many times in my life where I've thought back to that and I felt like a failure with my own kids, because I've always been a working mom. But things I now try to do a little bit differently with my grandson.
Thank you so much. So Harleen, I was wondering if you can answer this question as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I feel like I kind of am a mixture of the two, more leaning towards Rajanti's, but I think that for me, my mom came over when she was a lot younger, and my dad migrated in his 20s. So they culturally have really different upbringings. And my mom still kind of imbued our food with this love. I don't know how. Now I'm thinking about like the time it would have taken, but we always had a cooked breakfast, something fresh. You're leaving the house. I remember protein was a big thing. I think power, you need energy throughout the day. Here's some eggs, some dalia, or something that would kind of like keep you full for hours. And I'm thinking about that, you know, she's working. There's a lot of time constraints in the US culturally, you know, life is really fast paced. And yeah, it wasn't always Punjabi, like it wasn't always dalia or something like that. It might have been oatmeal, but just something warm and fresh was kind of the tradition. And now I think about it and I'm like, I don't even treat myself that well now. Without having any other people to take care of. So yeah, I think love is a big food love language for Punjabis. I think it is gendered, which comes with its own issues, but yeah, big theme.
So I wanted to talk about a couple of specific foods, which are like cornerstones of Punjabi cuisine.
Yeah.
So, and I think what's lovely is that all of you have such different experiences, you know, and so people can appreciate the diversity. So I was wondering if each of you could share what is the significance of roti, you know, within a Punjabi home? How is it prepared? Who prepared it? And also we might get into saag and makki di roti. You know, so there are many different kinds of roti. But if we could talk about, you know, roti and also, you know, saag and makki di roti, I'd love to hear your personal reflections about, you know, enjoying these foods as a home and what they meant, you know, to you growing up.
I can go first if you like.
Sure.
Sure.
So in the late 70s, my parents took all 5 children to India so that we could visit my dad's mom, who was bedridden with a stroke. And so some of my fondest memories, I was probably 11 or 12. And so we were in the village, also known as the Bend, right, in District Jalandhar, India. And we stayed for about 6 months. And I remember at my uncle's houses, even in the morning, in the ice cold months, not, you know, in cold mornings, you would have your hot cup of chai tea. But then to go along with that chai tea would be saag and makki di roti and a big dollop of homemade butter. And one of the regrets is that I have is I'm still learning to make saag, and I've never made makki di roti. But I ask my friends all the time, can you please teach me your recipes? And I think here in America, and I also know that my sister's mother-in-law, you know, when they grew up in Yuba City, they would go out to the fields and hand pick the sarong, right, to make the saag or the spinach dish. And I've never experienced that either, but very, very fond memories of saag and makki di roti tied to my 2 visits to India back in the late 70s and then back in 1999. And today, saag remains one of my favorite dishes. And you're probably going to kill me for saying this, but Trader Joe's does a pretty good job with their saag, right? And then I can home make my roti.
So just to clarify, we have, you know, the wheat roti, which is like the unleavened bread, but then, you know, at certain times of year, saag is prepared, and saag is, you know, a combination of spinach, but also mustard greens, right? And with a special kind of roti that's made out of corn flour with butter. So I was wondering, Pushpinderji, could you talk a little bit about, you know, if you had a tandoori oven, say, in your home, how did you prepare roti on a regular basis, but also give our guests some sense of how much preparation goes into making saag?
Yeah.
You know, this is a big effort to make
It's
that.
a big operation. It's a big operation. Yeah. So first and foremost, roti, you know, roti is a staple of of Punjab, right? They say there's so many sayings about roti. Pet na paiyan rotiyan sabbe garlan khotiyan. If you don't have roti in your stomach, nothing else matters. There was a movie, Roti, Kapda, and Makan, or Makan. You need roti, you need kapda, you need house, a shelter on your head, So all of that. So roti is a very significant part of Punjabi culture. And roti is made every single day, 3 times a day, fresh. And how to make rotis? You make the dough fresh. Since we had no refrigeration, it would, sour. The dough will sour. So you don't want pizza, you want roti. So they would make fresh flour, fresh dough all the time. My mother would do, and she used to have this big platter, a deeper platter we call parat. And she would make dough. And then, she was a very strong woman because she had to cook for about 20 people every single day, 3 times a day. A lot of preparation. And you are right, she had tandoor at home, because in tandoor, you can make 7-8 roti at one time. Whereas on tawa, on the griddle, you will make 1 roti at a time. So it took a lot of effort. Imagine summer, the heat of summer, 45 degrees, and she's cooking for 20 people alone, and we are coming from school, and everybody else is doing their own thing, and she's the one who's the bread maker in the house. And saag and makki di roti is like, like pizza used to be many years ago, 40 years ago. Pizza used to be a treat for us. Every Friday you have pizza night and movie night, right? So makki di roti and saag used to be this exotic dish, you will occasionally make. In winter, you will make almost every week. So today we're going to have saag. So what we used to do is we have farms outside. We will go pick fresh spinach, pick fresh mustard greens, and there were some other, one is called bathu and one is called fenugreek leaves. And we will put all those leaves together. And my mother knew the proportion. She would put onion, she would put garlic and ginger and green chilies, which everything is picked fresh from our own farm. And she had this clay pot. They would cook it in clay pots, since we have no gas, no electricity, nothing. So they made fire out of the cow dung cakes, right? So that's what we used to have, or wood. So she used to have 2 kinds of stoves, clay stoves. So she would put that pot, big pot, and chopping the saag used to be another thing. They used to have a curved knife, a big curved knife, dati, they call it dat, I think. And then she would, go like this, just like they do ham now, with the automatic machine, they do. So she used to go like this and chop very fine, because we didn't have any grinders. It had to be cooked creamy. So she had to cut it really fine. And it would take 6 to 7 hours to cook, because it's low flame down there, low fire, and the taste that you get out of that, you can't get out of the pressure cooker. You can't, a slow cooker is comparable to that. That's what you can say, cook it in there. But she would put everything in there, and the last thing she does is she puts this much butter in there, and my thing used to be, I used to say to my mother, first give me roti and then put butter on it and then put saag on it. So I used to put saag on top of the butter on the roti itself. Those of you who had never done that, that's the real way of eating makki di roti saag. Put saag on top of roti. Now, makki di roti is a very different thing. You can make dough all in one shot. Makki da atta, makki flour has to be made dough like 1 ball at a time, and with hot water. Otherwise, it will just fall apart. So my mother was super good at it, and she would put some fenugreek seeds in there, or javan seeds in there, salt and pepper, and she would just do it like this. She wouldn't roll it. She would do like this, and then around 1 roti at a time, and cooks on both sides, puts butter on both, ghee on both sides. Oh my God, I love my mother.
And can you also talk about the tadka process?
Oh, yeah. So after the saag is cooked, then you heat up the ghee. in a fry pan, steel pan, not non-sticks at that time. And she chopped onions and she chopped ginger and garlic, which you already have put already in there. But that smell, the fragrance of the ghee and, toasting onion and garlic and ginger is just incredible. And the fresh green or red chili in there, picked from your own plant. It's amazing. Tomatoes, if you have them, fine. If you don't have them, not a necessity.
So on a typical day, going back to the roti, finish up the roti conversation, how much time would you say your mom spent just making rotia?
So we were not a typical family. Yeah, we were not a typical family. So in the morning, we are all getting ready for school. So she's making, 40 pronchia, right? So for everybody, she's making 1 or 2 for everybody, depending on some will eat 3, some will eat 2. So it will take her about an hour and a half in the morning. So before we are up, she's ready with her dough and, fire is burning and she's doing cha and boiling milk and whatever else, right? My dad's milking the buffalo and the cow in the morning. I would do in the afternoon. So, and then as soon as we are gone to school, she'll clean up the house a little bit. Since we were not rich, we didn't have a cleaning person. So she would take it up that, do any laundry she has to do, and then after that she would clean up the dishes, whatever we need to do, and then she might take an hour rest or not for dinner. Now we didn't have electricity, so it was dark very early in winter. We had to be finished with everything but before it gets dark. So the night was, starting at 6 o'clock. Day was done at 6 o'clock. So she would start cooking at 4, and then by 6 o'clock we are done. So if you can say, she would cook 6 hours a day at least.
And that is only cooking.
Only cooking.
Laundry, getting water wasn't easy. And there's so much work to do.
And we didn't have running water. We had hand pump.
Right.
And so we would have to just, do this and bring the water out. And I was very clever. Whenever I saw there's laundry to be done, I'll just vanish. We were 20 people in the house. And so I knew that if they didn't see me, they won't remember me. So I just disappeared. And when I thought, an hour has passed, then I would reappear again.
Wow. Lovely. So, okay, I want to talk about one other major food item, which is very important for Punjabi culture, which is cha. And, I do historical research about women's history in California's Punjabi community. And one of the lovely traditions that the women did is that anytime someone came from India, and really the women started coming in the 1950s, they, the new family would be greeted at the airport. They would be provided like all of these household items to get started, even if, this person could basically be a stranger, but they wanted to help them get started with their new life in the US. And then the women would throw a big tea party to welcome them. And that was such an important part of their acculturation to living, in California. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, Rajdi, about how to make cha and what is the significance of cha in Punjabi culture?
So cha, or as Americans like to call it, chai, right? Yeah. So the difference is that you're going to take your loose black tea leaves and you're going to simmer them in hot boiling water over the stove until you can really see that the water has thickened a little bit. You can actually smell the chai. Some people add sugar. It's become pretty common not to add sugar because of our health issues and diets and so forth. And then you add your whole milk, or some people use 2% milk to be a little health conscious. And then you boil that milk along with the tea leaves. And then you use a sieve to actually, pour it into perhaps, like a kettle. or your teapot, and then you dispose of the tea leaves, down your garbage disposal. But jaw is, some people consider themselves to be jaw experts with the jaw masala. My sister is one of those individuals. My husband thinks he's the best jaw maker. But I will tell you that with my work schedule, and sometimes I meet people at the house, especially during COVID, my American friends, it's like, come over, let's sit outside. I'm going to make you a cup of Indian cha. And they love it, instead of having to go spend $5 at Starbucks, and it's not really Punjabi cha, right? So, and then like Pushpinder Benji said, cha is kind of like the American coffee alternative. So you can drink cha in the morning, then you can drink cha after lunch. And then some people even have it, after, in the late evening, which is a lot better for you than perhaps the coffee and the caffeine. And that white, milky texture, flavor, look is so unique to Punjabi Sikh people. And we love our cha.
Yes.
Big cups of it.
And how would you feel if you went to a Punjabi home and you weren't offered cha?
Oh, I call ahead and I ask. I'll say to my friends, Ramanique, I just want a good cup of cha. And so they know that's all I want. I don't want, the water and then the soda and then the lassi. I just want my cup of, that's what I'm craving, because we don't make cha a lot at home. But like you said, when we have guests, it's, typically our first offering to go along with, a sweet or an appetizer. So cha is very, very important to our Punjabi culture.
Thank you so much. So, Pushpinder ji, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the cultural significance of cha. You talked about all these Punjabi sayings about roti. Well, there's like another book to be written about, Punjabi sayings and cultural expectations and a whole culture surrounding cha. So can you fill us in a little bit about, the great importance of cha, for Punjabis?
Cha is not actually a Punjabi thing. We were introduced by the British, and just as an addiction, basically, right? So because they went there as a tea company, trading company, and they wanted business to expand their business. So my mother used to say that none of them drank tea until about 1920, something like that. She said they only used to drink milk or lassi, buttermilk. And then they would bring these carts to neighborhoods to get them to taste cha. And even when I was growing up, we're talking about 60 years ago, we were not given tea. My parents would not give us tea. And my mother used to say, if you drink tea, your color, you will become darker in color, because the tea is darker. So they thought it was addicting. So it's not good for kids to have tea. But now, so many decades later, tea is an integral part, although we still don't give tea to younger kids, to little kids. My grandsons, for example, do not drink tea. We don't offer them tea because it has caffeine, and you don't want to, intoxicate them with their little bodies with tea. But in grown-up culture, you asked a question, what would be if they were not offered tea? There's just not a possibility. There's just not a possibility they won't be offered tea. They will be offered tea, no matter what time of the day you go. And not only tea, you will have cookies, we call them biscuits, right? You will have biscuits, you will have some kind of mithai or something offered along with that. And so we don't have lavish tea parties, but tea is a very integral part, and every family has their own recipe of tea. Like Raj is saying, chai masala, right? Everybody has their own masala, and so many people are very possessive and they don't give the recipe of masala. But, basically, if you have saunf, fennel, and the small green cardamom, That's basically, some people put cinnamon, not others, but those two are the chai masala basically. And you simmer them, you boil them, and yeah. So it's a big unifier. They also used to sing, Pilo Ji Cha is a song. Pilo Ji Cha, Lipton Di Cha. Lipton is a brand, right? Buddhiya nu dendi hai jawan bana. So it makes the older people feel younger when they drink tea because, it's caffeine. So there's lots of songs and then things like that with cha, a very big part of cha, And they have a 100-mile cha. So the truck drivers drink cha, which is the darkest, like espresso coffee. And they say they have to drive 100 miles. So they have to have that energy, that boost. Energy boost. So, and then they make a mile-long cha. They pour the cup, like that. They keep on pouring, So, and then it becomes frothy. So there's so many kinds of cha. So many kinds of cha.
So thank you both for that. I wanted to broaden out the discussion a little bit because cha culture also touches upon the absolute importance of hospitality in Punjabi culture. And I was wondering if each of you could speak about this, and how are guests treated? How are they welcomed into Punjabi homes? And I think that's one of the most unique aspects of Punjabi culture for me. And I'll just share that when I went to Nagar Kirtan for the first time in Yuba City, like 15 years ago, and my husband's from South India, and we had no idea what to expect. And we just landed in Yuba City, we're walking around, and like 100,000 people from all over the world descend on Yuba City. And everywhere you go, people are just offering you cha. They're offering you food. They're devoting their time. They're giving you, material goods. I mean, the spirit of generosity, within the community is like deeply humbling. And, I just wanted to see if each of you could speak about like the importance of hospitality and how guests are treated in Punjabi culture. Whoever would like to begin.
I can start. So whenever I announce that we have guests coming, my husband will say, is the Queen of England coming? Because number one, your house must be spotless from windows to floors. If anybody uses the guest bathroom, I mean, it is, it must be spotless, shiny, like as though your mother would be coming with her white gloves on and she might use her finger to see if there's any dust anywhere. So there's that in the, and I've noticed this, I've been trained as a young child, your house must be clean. I mean, that's number one, right? The front door, all of that. But I was going to say that when someone comes to your house, especially after living in America for over 40 years, I feel as though in the American culture, it's quite common to say, let's meet at XYZ restaurant. What kind of food do you like? Mexican, Italian, whatever. But when you invite someone into your home, they are like, in my home, they're my guests walking into my home, taking time out of their very busy lives to spend time with us. So it's an extension of not only friendship and hospitality, but it's a reflection of what you like to do best. So whether it's you're an expert at making a homemade sweet, right? Or whether you want to make something a little heavier because you don't want to ruin dinner. And typically I found that when you invite someone over for dinner, it's not just one dish, right? It's 4 or 5 dishes. And then after dinner, then there's dessert. And so I watched my parents, And, I'm from a big family. And so you typically cooking for 2 or 3 people. I have to invite her daughters in. It's all just very beautiful. Even though it takes time and effort, when someone comes to your home, you've invited them and they want to be there. So you want to naturally make the eating experience pleasant for everyone.
Thank you.
Very nice. So, in Punjab, basically in Indian culture, our guest is Bhagwan, right? You say, Bhagwan ghar aate hain. When the guest comes home, you're grateful that somebody has come into your house. Now, Raji grew up in a very formal kind of environment here, where you go after you call or make an appointment. In Punjab, people just come. They just, but you are the happiest if somebody, and not if, but when somebody walks through that door. So I'll talk about when, but in India, peeling some fruits and then have tea ready at the same time, and there's always jalebi or samosa or pakode or lunch or dinner. But when we came here, I agree with Raj, we had to clean. There's toys before and after. So that's a very big deal. You do it, it's so delicious. And I get a morsel in my mouth because I was cool. It's a very happy heart when we hear that somebody is coming to our house. Now, and in contrast to my children now, my son saw me doing this and he says, Mom, you kill yourself before and after. And now he has guests over and he doesn't do anything special. If his kids are playing, their toys are there, he tells them, pick up their toys, don't trip over. That's it, right? But his house is clean anyways. But then he just makes one dish and I say, well, you have guests. He said, Mom, they're friends. And we are here to enjoy together. I could be killing myself and they should feel guilty making me do all the work. And, so it's very different culture now, but I totally relate to Raj. I've killed myself before the guest came by doing all that. My hair's white, who I am. Punjabi in that sense. But Punjabi have and everything to do. And the guest visit.
But the pace of life is so different here. The expectations are different. The social relationships are different. So what food traditions did you feel really essential, say, to pass on to your children or to maintain yourselves or by your partners? And what ways did you think, it just makes sense to modify some of those traditions? Whoever would like to begin.
You want me to go, Pushpin?
Sure.
So when we moved here in 1981, a small town called Atwater, outside of Livingston, near Turlock. At that time, so we're talking 42 years ago, right? And I'm sure it was the same, very we city, whether we were whether Yuba City was the and so I think one learnage of what fresh fruits and vegetables were at the local grocery store, right? Whether it eggplant, potatoes, obviously, but those spices that we used, right? The turmeric, the masala. If you didn't homemade, Buaji home makes masala, and these are things that I should learn how to do, but I haven't yet found the time to learn to make masala. But those basic and vegetable dish, meat dish, and then we learned from word of mouth from the other early settlers, what kind of wheat flour do you buy? What brand do you buy? That 5-pound, 10-pound bag. What kind of rice do you use? Because we like basmati. I think back then, like you said, Nicole, people wanted to help people. And so you just this network of new tips, and you just learned from one another items. If you weren't making them at home, but back then a lot of our moms and mothers knew how to make items in a blender, because Indian cooking is today, especially in a large family.
Thank you.
Yeah. To America from grew up on home cooked food and he grew groceries. I came to America and my world was like nutrition. To me, Twinkies, donuts, Lunchables, everything was good food because it was in America, right? So in America, everything has to be good. So I fed my kids and they were happy kids. They were awesome, right? So then I made pronti items. They were awesome, right? Slowly, once I used to make pronti, my husband at home, my kids wouldn't eat. He would eat pasta. Some son, he would eat steak or he would eat burger. And I was happy to make 3 meals a day at a time for 3 different people. And then we saw my son ate langar. And I said, oh, he can eat Indian food. He refused to eat Indian food at home. So whenever I tried to make something, I made some bread with egg or something, and I would say, here is toast with egg. He wouldn't eat. And then I say, oh, I'm going to make you French toast. I'm going to give you American toast. So I would give it different name, and then he would eat it. and then he went to Berkeley, and I said, what should I? Vartha is kid taste roasted egg plant with onions and tomatoes, spicy, but he says, Mom, that says that sounds great to me. Oh my God, he's grown up. So now my learned, but then I remembered my mother cooking. I remember my sisters cooking. So I have learned the cooking, and then more American people on our kids. So they were in Harvard together, and Dan Claff, he is a vegan, he's vegetarian. And I made prontia, and he started shouting at my son. He said, Tejinder, how dare you not cook or eat Indian food? Your mom is such an amazing recipes for keepsake. He lectured him so much. And now he's you know,
We all have sweet tooths, and just once in a while, my mom would kind of surprise, like, I'm really into some of this, and then she wouldn't get it, but the Visinada kind of like really, still the rest portions, but she doesn't process. Always tastes so simple, like it's not a store where it hasn't. So reason I go back.
In the genes, they're like making, and you'd like give our guests, which is you just watch people and you
Yes.
throw in this much aggregate.
Yes.
This much, and you have like anyone ever asks us how to make it possible to explain.
Yeah.
But if you can do your best and just what is a dish making and how do you make it?
I would just want to add to Harleen. That's something that's something. So, and one of them did not makki di roti saag. One of the winter dishes my mother used to make is called khichdi. Khichdi is basically lentil rice porridge. Is savory. It's not sweet. So it's good on stomach, easy on stomach. And in India, if you have never been there, go there because your stomach will get upset. Even when you live there, your stomach gets upset. So, it's light on your stomach. And so, and when she was very tired, for example, or, the day is not going well, she would just make khichdi. And we as kids loved khichdi. So let me tell you, we are so hungry. We can't wait for this to go in our mouths. But she knows we're going to burn ourselves. So she makes this khichdi and she uses this big platter. No, we are 6, 7 kids, others were a little bit grown up, but I am one of those 6, 7 kids, 3 of my sisters, boys, and 3 sisters, we 3 sisters. So we are just sitting, and this is just one big platter, no small bowls, and we have spoons. And my mother puts khichdi in there, is steaming hot, and she puts a dollop of butter, which, and I used to get extra butter on my side. So she used to say, the more you mix it, the more delicious it will taste. Her point was it will cool off faster if you mix it, right? So we would just go with all the force mixing it. But how she made it was, you take 2 times lentils. So you were talking about protein, Harleen, right? You were talking about protein in your food. So you take 2 times lentil, and the lentils are the moong dal, the yellow moong dal, and pink masar dal. So those mix of that, equal mix, you take 2 times of that, let's say 2 cups of that, 1 cup of rice, that would be enough for 10 people. That much will be enough for that many people. And you put 4 times water. Not all at once, you will put little bit, so otherwise it's gonna boil all out, boil over. Cook it on low heat and put some salt in it. And at the end, when it's the consistency of porridge, it will take good 45 minutes. Not less. And she used to use smaller rice. It's the broken rice. You don't use the whole long grain rice, not the long basmati rice, but the broken rice, because that mixes up very well. At the end, you do tadka just like you did for saag. So you take ghee and you only put cumin seeds in it. And that's all you do. And it has the lightest taste, but it is so delicious, Nicole G. I can't tell you. And if it's any leftover because it's winter, it won't go bad. She would, my mouth is watering. She would put a griddle on the stove and put ghee on it and put a little bit of in paper crepe that forms from the flour of the rice. Oh my God, you have to try that. That's my best recipe. I have taught it to my son. I have taught to my kids. Their kids love it. They love it. It's a little constipating sometimes, but it's really delicious. So it's easy to make. So if you take 1/3 rice, 2 times 2/3 lentils, and then 4 times water. And that's it, 45 minutes.
Now, have you ever tried making this in an Instapot?
I have not.
Okay.
But that will work very well, I think. Slow cooker will.
Yes.
How about a slow cooker?
Slow cooker will be better. But please try it. It's delicious. A
Okay.
whole meal in itself. Just have.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Slow cooker will be better.
How about
meal? Just have some
yeah,
delicious so
Haji?
So
food
in
basically.
banking, actually in life, and
Like Kentucky Fried
so
Chicken.
in America, first I was like, "Who?" I asked you, "What do you want to bring?" And I was like, thinking in the back of my mind, "We're not poor. We don't need you to bring anything." It was a little bit of a cultural adjustment for me. But one of the things that I made or have made is samosas. And my colleagues at work call them potato pies. But samosa is a very heavy Punjabi appetizer that you can eat with tea around 4 or 5 o'clock. And if you add some garbanzo beans to it, it's kind of like a full dinner if you have 2 samosas and 2 potato pies. So I've made samosa for, celebratory kids' birthdays. I've taken them to work, hence the word potato pies is where my commercial loan officers tend to call them. But I'll take a 10-pound bag of potatoes, which will equal about 100 samosas. And so after you've peeled the potatoes and you've got your pot going on one side, on the other side, you've got your chopped onion, your chopped green chili, your cilantro, you've got some green petite peas. Once you've sauteed the onion, then you add in your cumin seeds, your masala, your salt. Lemon juice is something that I add, fresh lemon juice in my potato mix. And then I cheat a little bit in that I don't make homemade samosa, roti. I'll use regular flour tortillas, cut them in half, and I will put them on my griddle. I'll use buttermilk to seal them, to make my little triangle, stuff it with my potato mixture. And then you can either boil them in pure vegetable oil. Some people like to use corn oil. Kids like to eat them with Heinz ketchup. We tend to eat them with garbanzo beans or chole, as we call them. Chutneys, whether it's the green mint chutney or the sweet and spicy brown chutney. So, and then if you're not using all 100 at, several events, you can freeze them, and then you always have them ready to go when your friend pops over for a cup of chai tea, right? So this is something that is fairly easy to do, and something that I taught my daughter how to do, because it's one of those go-tos when you do have guests, right? You must know how to make chai tea, and you must know how to serve samosas and cholles, because you can buy everything else at the store today, right? So that's my little recipe for today.
Sounds delicious. I was wondering if you could talk about, this is a favorite dish among Punjabis, but it's pretty difficult to prepare. And you may or may not have insights into this, but I was recently giving a talk with Chinese-Americans, and I believe bitter melon is originally from China. But I think that Punjabis make karelle or bitter melon like the best. And there has to be a lot of preparation that goes into it to make it delicious. So I was wondering if you could talk about the process of making karelle, how you cure it to remove the bitterness, and then how you stuff it with spices and onions and such, because it's so healthy, bitter melon. And this way of preparing it, I think, is just out of this world. So
yeah, so I can go on that.
okay.
So karelle is really healthful food, especially if you have diabetes. So in Punjab, they eat a lot of karelle. Those people who have diabetes, and if their family loves them, they will make them karelle every day. I know that because my sister-in-law, she used to make karelle. They don't have to cook every day, but they cook once in a week, and then they are served every single day because they really think it keeps diabetes in control. Now, there is two kinds of karelle. One is from Chinese store, one is from Indian store. The Chinese store has very smooth skin, and the Indian store has, those pimples, a lot of pimples on top. So they are bitter melon. They are bitter. So how do you take their bitterness out is you peel them. You don't have to wash them. Just peel them and rub them with salt. Really rub them with salt. Put them in sun for 2 hours. And they will dry up a little bit, the water will come out, the bitterness comes out, then you wash them and dry them, and then you slit their tummy. Put the slit in the middle, take out the seeds. Some of the seeds are very hard, and some people like crunchiness in them, some people don't. So I do not. I take out the seeds, and then you stuff them with a masala, specially prepared masala mix. What do you do in that? The biggest chunk is the coriander powder. That's the biggest mix. Then you put amchur. Then you put a little bit of garam masala. You can put kali mirch. So my mother only put dry masala. Some people stuff them with wet stuff also, like potatoes or things like that. You can make either way you want to, but the basic recipe is you have to take the bitterness out with the salt and with washing at least 2 hours, and then you have to stuff them inside. And then this is the key part. You have to take the thread, the sewing thread, and you have to wrap them around with the sewing thread so that the masala won't come out when you fry it. And then you shallow fry them. You don't deep fry them, you shallow fry them. And whatever oil you fry them in, you saute slices of onion in that. You chop slices, not fine chopped, kind of chunky slices. And you can also put potatoes if you like. I love potatoes. And that fragrance of karella and masala and that onion is the best. It is so delicious. You can eat with paronti, you can eat with roti, you can have dal on the side, usually chole dal. Split chana dal goes the best with karelle, but you can make any dal with it and just enjoy, and it's
Yeah.
healthy food.
I love karela. You could eat that.
I have to make for you once when you
All
come.
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's even like I think an uncle of mine started drinking Kerala juice every
Oh, yeah.
morning, and it's this whole blood sugar regulation. It's so good for you, and he reversed his diabetes. And it's one of those things where some people don't put stock into like holistic medicine, but I really think it's such an acquired taste. Like kids don't like it in it.
Yeah, they hate
I
karela.
hated it.
Kids do hate
Now I'll
karela.
eat it, and I think it is kind of I don't know. I think it is healthy for you. Yeah.
So I wanted to open it up to our guests who join us today. If they have any questions or interested in other recipes they'd like to, get information about, and I invite you to post your questions in the chat. And while people are thinking about questions, Pushpinderji mentioned briefly about langar and how your son that was one of the places where he first started enjoying eating Punjabi food. And I think folks in American culture aren't really familiar with the concept of langar, and it's really central to the Punjabi Sikh community. So I was wondering if you could talk about, all the significance of langar. What does it mean socially and also, religiously?
So langar is probably one of the traditions in the world. It could be a secular tradition that can wipe out hunger. There's an agency called Khalsa Aid. Their motto is no hunger with langar. And they feed hundreds and thousands of people every single day. But it started in probably 1481 when Guru Nanak was 12 years old. Guru Nanak was our first Sikh guru. So his father wanted him to become a householder, learn some craft, learn some business so he can continue on with his life. But this young man had nothing to do with it. He was too spiritual in his outlook. So his dad gave him 20 rupees. 20 rupees in 1481, I think, was a lot of money. And so he says, go buy something cheaper and then sell it more expensive and do a true bargain, which will make you richer. And this young man, he was with a friend, and he goes to buy some wares, and then he sees on the path that there are some hungry sadhus, some hermits. So he says, you haven't eaten anything. They say, for a few days we haven't eaten anything. So he says, okay. So he brings them food, cooks it, brings supplies, cooks it, and feeds them. That we believe was the first tradition of langar, and the 20 rupees Guru Nanak invested at that time continues to this day to feed langar. Now, langar is a great equalizer. Now, if you're rich, you are poor, you are Hindu, you are Sikh, you're Christian, you're Jew, you are anybody. You're from Africa, you're from China. If you go to a Gurdwara, you will sit together with anybody who's there eating and eat langar, no questions asked. Langar is always fresh. Langar is vegetarian. Langar is high in cholesterol, but delicious. So it uses a lot of butter. But, King Emperor Akbar, he ate langar with the sangat. We call people who go to Gurdwara sangat. company, good company, right? Rich company. So langar is something, it's free for everybody, open to everybody. Most of the gurdwaras have it almost every single day. San Jose Gurdwara, if you ever come to San Jose Gurdwara, they open langar at 5 in the morning. They go until 10 p.m. and it is served fresh every single day. They serve breakfast, they serve lunch, they serve snacks, they serve dinner. So every single time. And somehow langar taste, you don't get it at home. I once asked a langar cook, I said, how come you make curry so delicious here and I can't make that at home? He said, you're trying to compete with Guru Nanak.
Oh, wow.
You just can't do that. Because the deliciousness that you have over there, the taste you have over there, the richness you have over there, it's made with seva. Right? It's made with love, which is a key ingredient also. And it's made with dedication and devotion from people. So if you are listening to this webinar or when you listen, you have not had langar yet, please go eat langar. There is a chance you will get hooked on to Punjabi food if you haven't tried it before. And best of all, it doesn't cost you anything. You can go eat in a gurdwara anytime, no questions asked, just cover your head and take your shoes off. That's the requirement.
So can you talk a little bit about enjoying langar at the Darbar Sahib in Amritsar and how many meals are prepared each day at the holiest Gurdwara Sahib in the world?
So the estimate, I wrote this article, I think about 3 years ago. That time they said that 100,000 people eat every single meal every day. So every meal they're serving about 100,000. I mean, it's not this small. Imagine my mother cooked for 20 people and she spent 6 hours. And they, I think, have 450 employees. And there's thousands of kilograms of onions and ghee and tomatoes and rice and dal and atta that is single day. And their vats in which they cook, I think the biggest one they have is about 16 feet wide. It's unfortunately one of the guys who was cooking fell in it, one time. So they're that big. They're like a well. So 100,000 people every meal. So you can imagine, how many people they're feeding. I think 10 million people or something like that every year they feed. And it's all free of any cost to anybody. All made with donations.
And, you talked about this radical concept, about langar and about how powerful it is that people, no matter what their social classes, their status, their background, their ethnicity, that once you share a meal with someone, there's this bond there between them. But if I was wondering, Raj, if you could talk a little bit about the other values associated with langar, such as why people sit on the floor together.
So as Pushpinder mentioned, the word equality. So no one is better than anyone else. So in America, we obviously have adopted tables and chairs. I've seen at most Sikh temples or gurdwaras, there's both, right? So people can sit on the floor and eat comfortably because perhaps they're accustomed to sitting with their legs crossed and it's easier for them. I know that for some of our elderly at the Singh Sabha Sikh Institute here in Fresno, it's easier for them to sit at a table with chairs. So we offer both. I do know that on an average Sunday, most of our gurdwaras up and down the valley are averaging 1,500 to 2,000 attendees. So it takes an army of ladies typically, even though we do have 2 male cooks at the Singh Sabha Gurdwara that I attend, it takes an army of ladies in the morning to actually make rotis for that number of attendees. So for my kids growing up, it was like, we would take them to the Gurdwara, and then at home you would refer, they would say, Mom, I'd like to have that dal that I ate at the Gurdwara, the brown lentils, or that dal that we ate at the Gurdwara, or I want prashad, just like we get at the Gurdwara. So those childhood memories then, come into your home, and then, one has to be able to serve and provide your kids with a very simple meal that they enjoy at the Gurdwara. I have invited many non-Sikh friends to come and join us at the Sikh Institute so that we can introduce them not only to our venue, but to enjoy breakfast and lunch with us so that they can see how we operate, if you will, as equal men, equal women. Everybody's there to serve. At our particular temple, they're always asking families or friends to go in together, and everyone is encouraged to take a Sunday out of the year so that the Gurdwara doesn't have to bear the expense of serving 1,500 to 2,000 people every Sunday. A family will typically take it on, and they'll do it for best wishes for the family or the community, or for their new business, or for their child graduating. But langar is a crucial part of the Sikh religion, as Pushpinder explained, as well as working hard, honest work, and remembering God every single day. So we could do a lot more with langar seva, I think, here in America, here in California. And so there'll be more to come on that, I would assume.
Yeah. We have a question that we're going to pose in a moment, but I would say I know some students at UC Davis and I think Sacramento State, and they would offer langar, in downtown Sacramento to people who, didn't have houses to live in. And, so there have been efforts to really solve this problem of, global hunger through langar. Mm-hmm. So thank you. That was such a great discussion.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to add that I think now, I'm seeing that at some of the larger Gurdwaras, like the one at West Sacramento, they've got the machines that will mix the dough, which makes it easier for the 40 ladies that are coming in to make the rotis. And we're trying to adopt some of that here in Fresno as well, because the congregation numbers, as immigration is exploding at the moment, we have to be able to serve those that come. I mean, we can't run out. It would just be too embarrassing for, the committees and the boards of each particular Sikh temple. So I see more efficiencies being looked at, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. There is a question in the chat. First off, Amandeep, thanks you all for sharing your experiences, and wanted to ask, to what extent does Punjabi food play a role in carrying our culture across the barriers of immigration? So we might even think of that as what role Punjabi food plays in this process of immigration, of settling in a new place, maybe even, finding your community in what is an entirely new, an entirely new city or town. Yeah.
I was going to say, so I talked a little bit earlier about how difficult it was in the early 80s, having to travel to Yuba City to buy the simplest of things. In Fresno, there is a warehouse. I mean, I don't know how many thousands of square feet, like 20,000 plus square feet out on West Shaw. I have not visited this warehouse as of yet, but it's all over, Punjabis in Fresno. It's everywhere. So how lucky, how fortunate are the new immigrants that come here, because they'll never know what we had to do 40 plus years ago. There's grocery stores, there's restaurants, there's clothing stores. I mean, it is night and day. Jewelry stores galore now. And, not only in Fresno, I know that they're in Tracy, in Manteca, in Turlock, in the Bay Area. It's just amazing. And how lucky am I that I no longer have to drive 3 hours to Yuba City to go buy something that I should have in my cupboard every single day.
So I wanted to follow up on this question, which is a great question, and Raji's remarks, which is how much the food availability of Indian foodstuffs and has changed. And I want to relate this to Punjabi weddings. So when I've done research, on the first generation of Punjabi women who came as a cohort to Yuba City in the 1950s, let's say there were about, 20 women, and they did all of the cooking for the weddings. There were no catering services.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and some of the men too. There's a man named Bhaktawar Puriwal who was famous for making atta in a container like this, and he was so strong. You could not go to the Gurdwara on a weekend and not see him there making atta for hundreds of people. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, if you could speak about food traditions related to weddings and how Punjabi weddings have changed over time, because it seems like there's a brinksmanship of they're just getting more elaborate. And I would think just sending out invitation cards costs a small fortune alone. They're like books, or like gift sets, that's just the invitation. So then there's the expectations of hospitality surrounding food and mithai or sweets, and who provides that food. So I was wondering if you could talk about that, and if you've noticed any changes over time in your communities in terms of the role that women play in preparing the food for weddings.
So I can say back in the early 80s, mid 80s, we would rent halls. They were very simple halls, right? A hall, very cement floor, nothing in it. You would hire a cook, or they were well known, and the girl side of the family would typically be responsible for receiving the groom side of the family, right? Serving tea, having the wedding ceremony, putting on the luncheon. And then the groom side of the family would take their daughter, and then they'd probably have a reception, perhaps the next day at their house, or not at their house, but perhaps at another. So I have seen some of the things that you're referring to, Nicole, where families now will go to India and they'll buy boxes, beautiful ornate boxes, to put the sweets on the lower level, then 3 cards on top of that. One for the jago, one for the wedding, one for the reception. And I'm like, oh my. And then the halls today have to be beautiful venues with chandeliers. And you speak about the cost of putting on a wedding. We did it for my son back in 2016, and we kind of maxed it at 300, which is small for an Indian wedding, because I didn't want 800 or 900 people, and neither did our kids. But today, I can't imagine what it costs. But what I'm seeing lately in Fresno or the Central Valley is kids are now choosing destination weddings. So recently, I was talking to someone at a reception, and he goes, Raj, I'm going to Cabo San Lucas for the 5th time in about a month. And I said, oh my. I said, well, how does that work? He said, well, it's going to cost us about $3,000, them to travel and pay for their room for maybe 4 nights, right? And then I would assume that the host, whether it's the girl's side of the family or the boy's side of the family, pays for, all the entertainment for the jago, the wedding, and the reception. So lately, I've seen kids want to go elsewhere. Because they want it to be something different, because there's so many people here using the same event centers. that they want their wedding to be unique and not be here. They would rather have it in Puerto Vallarta, Cabo San Lucas, or, you know, at a winery on the Central Coast. So it's been interesting to watch. I'm sorry, but I'm a conservative banker. I will never pay that kind of money for that. I would rather buy my kid a house or real estate, but that's me as a conservative banker. There are people that is their lifelong goal is to throw this amazing event for their daughter's wedding or their son's wedding, and God bless them, each to his own. But yeah, I cannot imagine the expense of spending $300,000-$400,000, and that doesn't include, Nicole, the jewelry that's given, the clothing that's given to the in-laws, right? I mean, I can't imagine what all that costs. Pushpinder, what are you seeing in the San Jose area?
I'm so glad my kids married easier, you know. I didn't have to pay through nose, but I agree. It is unreasonably expensive now. It's in name of tradition. I think we've gone too far. We have to come back a little bit.
Someone, Catherine Wallerstein has posed a question. She really enjoyed listening to you all talk about love and hospitality and food. And she wonders, you know, since food nourishes in more ways than just the physical, can you guys maybe discuss how the food preparation and sharing it nurtures socially and spiritually, and also maybe the role it has in repair, maybe
And healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful question. Thank you for asking. I think they say, you know, the family who prays together stays together. I think the family who eats together and cooks together stays together too. So working together at something which is so essential for your survival, for your living. What better can be than working together on that and having, you know, spending time making it and then enjoying it and then relishing it. And I think that's the best thing to do. I think it plays a very big role. I feel so bad for my mother that we weren't there for her. But I am very fortunate that my kids are there for us. So the times are changing now. The younger kids are realizing, Herline, like you, they realize, you know, we need to work with mom and dad. You know, we need to be there. So I think it's really very nice. It's a very big part of your survival, I think, as a unit, family unit.
I think it's also what you were saying about this generational shift,
Yeah.
you know, as much as food and the culture is so beautiful, that doesn't mean that there aren't the issues that come with it, like how much work your mother was doing, how much time and labor it takes. So I think that food now is also, it is repairing in a way. It's changing the gender norms. You know, men are expected to learn how to make
Yes.
java, men are expected to make round rotis, or you buy the ones that you can just put on the tawa.
Yeah.
But I see that in my own family. I see how my dad has shifted since coming to the US, and he has, you know, his idea of gender roles has completely shifted, and there's been so much growth.
Yeah.
And I think food is kind of integral in that, because you have it so many times a day. It's a necessity, but it's also a social thing that brings the family together. So I think it actually has done a lot of repair work too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think we're almost out of time, and we've had many beautiful, positive comments come in, and you know, thanking you, Pushpinderji, Rajji, and Harleenji, you know, for your great insights. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you had any final thoughts you'd like to share with us today.
Thank you so much for putting this together. It was very, you know, for me personally, it was healing to talk about it, to reminisce my mother and those experiences, you know, from 65 years ago. I think it was beautiful. Thank you so much for doing it. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Nicole, the same for me. It made me think of my childhood and reflect. And today's been kind of emotional as well. And so I'm just grateful for my mother teaching me even though I hated chopping all those onions and chopping green chilies and the garlic, oh my God. And I would smell my hands for days. I'm so grateful that she taught me the basics of every Punjabi dish that there is, right? And just, you know, we're so close to Mother's Day and it's her birthday on Sunday. So thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share what she has passed on to me.
On that note, thank you so much to our panelists, to Nicole and Harleen, for your perspective and for curating this. It's so wonderful. I think we're all starving now and need to find somewhere where we can go and feed ourselves, either to the nearest Gurdwara or the nearest home. So thank you so much to all of you. And it's just such a pleasure to share this space with you during Punjabi Week, during AAPI month, and highlight these really important foodways of the Punjabi community. I just want to end by reminding everybody that tomorrow we have a film screening by our very own Harleen Ball, Unpacking Immigration, that runs from 6 to 7 p.m. here on the UC Davis campus. Please look at our website for further information. And finally, we have
Dr. Cush's event where he'll be donating his papers at the UC Davis Library from 5 to 7 p.m. It'll be a very special event, and I hope you all join us.
I will be there. We will be there.
We'll be there. Looking forward.
Yes. So happy late Mother's Day. And I just can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye.
See you guys
Thank you.
Friday. Bye.
Yeah.